Once I worked through my own shame when it came to that, my whole life changed. Once I realized that I could speak up for what I wanted, if I could heal my shame, I started experiencing deeper emotional and intimate connections with people. The best sex I've ever had, all the good, juicy things. It took me years of therapy and books and podcasts to figure out how to do this. So, what I aim to do is give women a shortcut to the years it took me so that they can get moving now.
Welcome to the place where we hear empowering stories of transformation and then we turn that into art that reminds us to be great. I am your host and artist, Jessica James, and this is the I Empower Podcast. Rena, thank you so much for being on with me today. I'm really excited to hear your story and share it with our listeners and our followers. I think what you are doing is incredible and there's not enough talk about it. So I'm really pumped to just share what it is that you do. So I will introduce you as I know you. I did my homework and you're an intimacy coach and educator. And I think that is phenomenal because we always think that we know how to love and we know how to be intimate, but there's so much more to it than just, like surface level. So I'll have you introduce yourself and tell us what it is that you do and how you got to where you are now.
Sure. So, yes, that is what I do now. I'm also writing. I just signed a publishing deal. So,
Oh my
that's
gosh.
exciting.
Yay.
Yes. And I
Yes.
have a TEDx talk that I'm giving in September. So, my message is broadening, which I'm very excited about, but a little bit about my background because I haven't been an intimacy coach my entire adult life. I spent 14 years as a deputy district attorney with the Los Angeles County DA's office. And while I was there, spent the bulk of my career specializing in sex crimes, child abuse, and domestic violence cases. And so I worked alongside survivors on a daily basis, had an intimate understanding of how sexual shame can impact a person's life. And while I was seeing all this happening in the courtroom, I was battling my own sexual shame in not wanting what, air quotes, everyone else wants, in feeling like I was trapped within the confines of white picket fence monogamy and vanilla sex. And once I worked through my own shame when it came to that, my whole life changed. Once I realized that I could speak up for what I wanted, if I could heal my shame, I started experiencing deeper emotional and intimate connections with people. The best sex I've ever had, all the good, juicy things. And and then I took a look at my career and I realized that I had run my course as a prosecutor. I'd served for a decade and a half, and I wanted to help women in a different capacity, kind of cut out the middleman, cut out the justice system, cut out the weird things that juries do, and start helping women now because I saw how it turned my life around. I also recognized that it took me years of therapy and books and podcasts to figure out how to do this. So, what I aim to do is give women a shortcut to the years it took me so that they can get moving now. And as a coach, I have a signature coaching program called Shameless. I've had over 70 women go through that program. I work with them one on one, and it is such a humbling honor to be able to stand alongside these women as they put in the work to really step into their power, not just in the bedroom, but beyond too.
Oh my gosh, that is absolutely incredible. So I want to back it up a little bit and
Yeah.
just really learn more about you and how you got to be where you are. So district attorney prosecutor, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what made you pick that as a career path initially?
Well, it's funny because I went to college to be a music journalist of all
Oh my
things.
God.
Yeah.
Wow,
I
yeah.
know, I know. I've always loved writing. Used to be heavily involved in the music scene here in Los Angeles, where I'm from. And my first year, I took a senior level criminology class as an elective. And oh my gosh, I could not consume enough of it. I
Yeah.
was obsessed with why people deviate. And I knew that that was there was a calling for me there. So, uh, switch majors, started diving head deep into sociology, criminology. But then, of course, the next question became, well, what am I going to do with this degree, right? Do I want to go get a master's, get a PhD, and become an academic when it comes to this? Or is there a way that I can implement this love I have and start getting in there and getting my hands dirty without being a cop and carrying a gun around because that's not really me.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, I decided not just I want to be a lawyer, but I want to be a prosecutor and I want to work with sex crime survivors. That's what
Wow.
I want to do. So, I applied to law school. I was fortunate enough very early on to get first an unpaid internship and then a paid position as a law clerk at the LA County DA's office. So, dream job. And then I got hired at the age of 25. And within the first few years, was able to start prosecuting sex crimes cases and very serious ones at
Wow.
that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I got right in there and got to work. And when the highs were high, so when justice was served, best job in the world. But I saw that the system doesn't entirely work the way it's meant to. And when that happened, it was absolutely devastating for me. So after about a decade of that, which is longer than a lot of my former colleagues can spend doing just that kind of work, usually you kind of burn out, you need a break, you go and do something else. I realized that I'd played my part, and the vicarious trauma, the injustices I saw, wore on me too much, and I had to put myself first. So I stopped prosecuting those kinds of cases, transitioned into other work within the office, but I didn't love it. I didn't love it. It was like it didn't light me up. It became a paycheck.
Yeah.
And I my career is more than a paycheck to me. I want to have purpose and I want to create impact in the world. So as I was figuring out, well, how do I do that? Because I can't go back to sex crimes. I just can't. My initial thought was I'm gonna go to school part time while still working at the DA's office to become a therapist. That's what I was planning on doing. The pandemic hit. I had
Yes.
baked yes, I'd baked all the bread, I'd watched all the TV, I'd done all the things, right? And I'm
Yep.
like, "Okay, how long is this gonna last?" And I think, like, with many people, it was the great reckoning, the great existential reckoning for me, and, I asked myself, "Is there a way I could start helping people sooner?" I signed up for a 6-month coaching certification and very quickly began to see that my classmates, my cohort mates who were also trained to become coaches, wanted to be coached in this niche area that I was going into, women's intimacy.
Yeah.
And we have to do a certain number of hours to get certified. And I ended up with about 4 times as many hours as I needed because so many people reached out to me, do you want to practice coach with
Wow.
me?
Yeah. That's
Sure. And so,
awesome.
so then from there, I got asked to become the resident women's intimacy instructor on a platform called Tat Lab that was founded by John Kim, also known as the Angry Therapist. He's a writer. And then my coaching practice kind of took off, and I couldn't do both simultaneously. I couldn't be a DA and a coach at the same time. So I made the scariest decision I've ever made.
Yeah.
I've made quite a few of those to leave my very stable and respected career as a DA to help women have great sex and experience deep intimacy.
Oh my gosh, my face is hurting like from the smiles that you are giving me right now. This is absolutely incredible. I just want to highlight the fact that later in life that you were like switching it up. You're like, this is not it for me anymore. And I think it's important for mental health purposes, like you mentioned, that it wasn't there for you. It was draining. And you're like, I'm gonna do something. Like I'm gonna change my path. And I mean, that's one of the things that we talk about a lot on the podcast is how we are ultimately in control of our path. And like if we want to switch it up at any moment, like, you know, you can do it. You can do it. It takes work and it can be very scary, like you mentioned. But girl, that is incredible. I just want to
Thank
highlight
you. And
that.
just, because you may not know how old I am. I'm 40 years old. And so there's never too late of a time to do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I say that all the time. That age doesn't, at any point in your life, if you feel like you are not fulfilled, just go for it. Change it. Every day is a new day to start new. So,
Right. Whether that be career or
yeah.
relationships. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really, I've seen that in my own life. I'm not afraid to drop a bomb when things aren't working because once you drop bombs, everything's leveled. And from there, you can build your dream home from the ashes. And yeah, so don't be afraid to drop bombs.
I
Figuratively, of
love
course.
that. Yes,
Figuratively.
figuratively, please, guys. Awesome. Oh my gosh. So, like, my mind is running a mile a minute and I'm trying to like catch up to it because I feel like I have so many questions for you. So, you went from this position, and you're also using your experience with domestic violence survivors and sexual assault survivors to take that into the practice that you are doing now. So, how important is it that if you've experienced, domestic violence or sexual assault, or even it's might be safe to say if you haven't, why is what you're doing so important?
Right. So, really, the crux of everything I do centers around shame. And sometimes that shame can come from being a survivor of sexual assault. And there can also be a deep level of trauma and triggers associated with that. So I've worked with women running the gamut in terms of assaults they have survived, abuse they've survived, and some women who never suffered any sexual assault or abuse, but are dealing with another type of shame. So when I've worked with women who go into a trauma response state during sex, for example, like they tell me I shut down, or if I'm touched on this one particular part of my body, which is where my abuser used to touch me, I go into a panic attack. So there's different trauma responses, and so we work very closely to start creating new neural pathways so that their body doesn't go into that kind of trauma response because our brain's trying to protect us, right? So understanding how trauma works, really being able to help women feel safe in their own bodies, that's one aspect of it. And the other could be I have not survived trauma, but because, say, my cultural or religious messaging told me growing up that I am not supposed to, let's just say, experience self pleasure, right? That a woman's right to pleasure is dirty, that it's wrong, it's shameful. So we do some hardcore unprogramming there. My approach is based in neuroscience. Um, you can't really throw a rock on the internet these days without hitting a coach who's a spiritual sexuality coach. That is not me. And I'm not throwing shade, but it's the way my brain works. It's the lawyer in me. I want the evidence. I want the science.
Yeah,
I
give me
want to
this
know.
stuff. Yeah.
I want to know why this works. So it's rooted in neuroscience, understanding how our brains work, how we can change our thinking, our thoughts, our beliefs, which is why I'm able to get my clients such great results in a very short period of time. So, but big picture, coaching is different than therapy because I can share my personal stories with people, and I firmly believe that the most effective way to dissolve shame when it comes to being a woman is to hear from women like you who've been in a similar position. So I'm not afraid to share my stories, and my clients know that they can ask me anything one, that I've seen everything, especially because of what I witnessed as a
Right.
prosecutor, seeing some of the most horrific things that I wish I could unsee. But also, I'm willing to share everything because there's nothing you can tell me I haven't heard before at this point. Because in addition to my coaching, I've educated a few thousand women at this point, and just hearing the vast range of experiences, nothing you can say is going to shock me. And so there is that level of comfort there, knowing that there's not going to be any judgment, knowing that I will respond with compassion, empathy, not only by sharing what I've been through, but hey, I had a client who you remind me of who had a similar situation happen.
Yeah.
So that's really how it all ties in together, because especially seeing when I was a DA children who were survivors of assault, it's so easy to feel like you're the only one out there who's experienced anything like this, and to feel so alone, and to feel like this is your dirty secret, and that can follow you all the way into adulthood. So it all works together, really. It's not my experience as a DA and my experience working in women's intimacy. It's all of it. It's all of it.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Again, my mind is just running a mile a minute. I'm trying to like catch my thoughts, but I think what you're doing is great. And, you know, a lot of times in society, there, like you mentioned, cultural not specification, what's the word I'm looking for, just cultural approaches to sex, and then of course trauma, and then you even have a group of people who've maybe never experienced that, but just societal. I just remember growing up and just thinking that it was okay for men to self-pleasure, but women, it was very much like women don't do that. Like you mentioned before, it's dirty. And so how are you able to break that with people and just really help them understand how important it is to love your body and be able to feel that connection with your personal body so that you can take that into the bedroom with a partner?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I think that we need to educate. So, and I'll take this opportunity to do just
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
If we're looking at the body, the human body, the clitoris, right, which exists only on women,
Yep.
it is the only part of the human body whose sole purpose is pleasure. Okay, like let that sink in. Our bodies are meaning cis women. Our bodies were designed for pleasure. Designed for pleasure. All right. More nerve endings than any other part of the human body. That is mind blowing. So just understanding that, because if we look at religious sexual shame and, God has a reason and God has a purpose. Well, okay. Well, let's look at your body then.
Yeah.
Why else would there be this part of your body? Because if we look at the male body, the penis, for example, other functions. You need it for reproduction, you need it for urination. I mean, it does other things. The clitoris, don't need it for anything other than just to feel good.
Yeah.
So okay, let's get that out there, right? And
Yeah,
then
thank you for saying that, because I never really thought about it in that. I mean, I never, as it is, I thought about it as it is, and that's enlightening to me.
uh, and then going and women, so say that most women don't understand also that the clitoris extends all the way back into the body, and that most women need external stimulation in order to orgasm. So they could be doing something at home, like, oh, but it's not, why is it when I have intercourse it's not happening? And
Yeah.
then again, we educate, well, 80 to 85% of women can't orgasm just through intercourse alone. So, it's normalizing that. And then part of the work I do with my clients is assigning them homework that involves spending time touching themselves, but we ease into it. So we do a practice together with our cameras off on Zoom, where I guide them through a very G-rated self-touch practice, just to get them comfortable touching their bodies. And then their homework is to take that to a less G-rated area, and I kind of give them instructions on how to do that. I've worked with women who struggle having orgasms just on their own, and so we try out a ton of different methods to see what's gonna work best for them. So really, I do have a program that follows a method that has been proven now to be effective, but it's always individually tailored to each woman because an unpartnered woman who's never had an orgasm before, suffering from religious shame, is very different, has different concerns than a woman who's been married for 15 years, is on the verge of divorce because she feels like the sex life is gone and she wants something else, right? So it's always going to be uniquely tailored because every woman's unique. Um, so yeah, hope that answers your question. I kind of
Yeah.
go
Oh
off
my
on
gosh.
tangents as you can tell, but
No, I think it's very informative. Me, I'm going to get a little personal with you guys on here, and I think it would be safe to say that I never orgasmed until I was in my 30s. I just thought, I mean, I had done research, and when I say research, I mean Google search
uh-huh.
on like myself, and I enjoyed sex. I enjoyed intimacy, air quotes intimacy. But I thought I was one of those, you hear about like women. I don't even, and you can probably tell me if this is just false information. And I'm just thinking back from when I was younger looking this up. But, being in a group of women that were just not, they just couldn't orgasm, that there was this rare thing of like women, they just couldn't orgasm. And then when I met my now husband, who is very intimate. He's an intimate lover. He is I experienced intimacy with him on a level that I had never experienced with anybody before. And when it happened, I was like, holy shit, I didn't think that that was possible. Like, what? Oh my gosh, this is what everyone's been talking about.
Oh my
So,
gosh, yes! Oh, I love this so much,
yeah.
Jessica.
Oh my gosh. And so like I feel, and after the relationship that I have with him, we discussed the importance of exploring your own body and knowing your own body and taking the time in the bedroom to discuss what you like and having that communication and things like that. So does that play a big part in what you're doing as well when you're helping maybe partnered people who are struggling in the bedroom? Is this kind of like a thing where you're like, okay, this is what you need to do at home? There needs to be that connection with your partner and communication.
1,000%, and the research, supports this, that if you talk about sex outside of the bedroom, so intimate communication outside of the bedroom, couples who do that, 50% of them report being satisfied in their relationship. For couples who don't do that, it drops down to under 10%. So
Wow.
just stressing again the importance of doing this. So there are a ton of ways that you can start having these conversations. Um, Normally, what I do is I have tools that help my clients figure out what it is they're actually craving because I like
Yeah.
to say you can't crave what you don't crave. If the sex that's on offer isn't actually what you're yearning for, of course you're not going to be daydreaming about it and craving it, right? Like
Yeah.
I like to say you're not going to crave a 7-Eleven ham sandwich, right? So but for a lot of women, it's like, well, what is the thing that I crave? So we use some tools to figure out what that looks like. Whether that be, I want to be more submissive in the bedroom. Like I want to be tied up, I want to be submissive, or I want more intimate, non-sexual physical connection. Like I want to be
Mm.
romanced a bit.
Yeah.
And every woman's unique. So we figure out, okay, what is it that is your delicious meal that isn't the 7-Eleven ham sandwich? What does that look like? And then how do we then put you in a great position to start communicating that to your partner? And oftentimes, after they've taken, the quizzes and tests I've given them, I'll ask them, would you feel comfortable asking your partner to do the same? And I can't force homework on their partner, but I'll tell you, most of the times the partners are very excited to do this work
Yeah. Yeah.
if they know that we're working together. Because I've had clients who are like, I don't want my partner to know that I'm doing this for a variety of reasons, and that's fine as well. Um, so yeah, having those conversations, some apps that I recommend to couples that they can start using. One is called Paired, Paired. That has a little bit of sexual content, but it's overall relational content. You each get a question sent to you every day on the app. You both answer it. It's short form, like maybe a sentence. And then once you've answered, you get to see your partner's response.
Oh,
And
yes. I think I've seen
it's so
advertisement
cool.
for
Yeah,
that.
I
I
keep seeing
thought it
ads
would be
for it
fun.
on Instagram, and it's free.
Yeah.
You can get a paid version, but the regular one's free. I do it every day with my partner.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Yeah,
so
I'm
that's
gonna try that
really
out.
fun. I love it, and all the questions are based on research done by a lot of it's done by the Gottmans and, other sex and relationship experts, researchers, and therapists. And then there's a fun one called Spicer, Spicer, and that's similar in that it sends you each a prompt every day, but these are very much sex related. And some of them are a
Yeah.
bit wild and out there,
Yeah.
but it sends you a prompt and you each give it a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or a thumbs in the middle, like a maybe, and then it alerts
Yeah.
you when you have a match. Those are some easy ways because for a lot of people it's like, "Ugh, I don't even know how to bring it up."
Right. Yeah. Oh
Um
my gosh, that's awesome.
That having relationship check-ins where one of the items on your check-in list is sex, how did we do this month when it comes to sex? On a scale of 1
Yeah.
to 10, what could make it a 10? So you don't need to reinvent the wheel here. Use technology, make it your friend.
Oh yeah. I mean, to me that sounds like exciting. I'm thinking of my, 35-year-old self like, "Oh, you know, this would be fun." It would make me feel like a teenager again almost. Like waiting to see what my partner and my husband's response would be for something like that. That's
It
cool.
is fun. And that's the thing is that sex is a form of expression and it's a form of play. And and returning back to that and seeing it as this safe space where we can play, where we can imagine, where we can be kind of in flow state. Because if you think back to how you were as a kid when you play pretend, there were no winners and losers. It was just the sheer delight of doing this thing and enjoying yourself. And as adults, we often lose sight of that and forget that sex can be that, where you lose
Yeah.
time, where you have fun, where you pretend, you make believe, and it's an adult form of play and expression. So I love that you said, "Oh my gosh, this is fun,"
Yeah.
because I say, "Make
Sounds
sex
like
fun again, make sex
yeah.
fun again."
Hello, beautiful. I just wanted to pop in here really quick and remind you that if you love what you're hearing and you want to hear more of it, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss next week's episode of I Empower. And if you're feeling extra generous and you would like to give us a review, we would greatly appreciate it. Those help bump us in the algorithm so that more people are able to find these empowering stories to help them. Also, don't forget to check out the art that goes along with today's episode. You can do so at iempower.club or on Instagram at iempowerclub. And if you personally feel connected to the story and the art and you would like to purchase a limited edition print that goes along with it, you can do so on our website. As a reminder, all of the art sales go to support the podcast and help us continue this mission each week of bringing you empowering stories. All right, back to the show. Oh my gosh, you're gonna have to make that your slogan. I love that.
I've run that as a
Oh,
workshop before, actually.
yeah. Yeah. Because too, so in your experience, I know one of the things that my husband used to joke about, he had never been married before we got married, when we were 30. Yeah. No. 32. I can't remember. Anyways, um, after when you're having fun, you forget about like the numbers, just all just becomes, each
We were
day with
just
him.
talking about that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He's
go
gonna be like,
same.
I can't believe you don't know how long we've been married. But yeah, we're about to celebrate our 3-year anniversary. I do know
Yeah.
that. Thank you. However, he used to joke because of all the guys at work who have been married before talked about, oh well, after you get married, that's when all the fun stuff stops and all this. So would you have advice? Because I think that, there is some truth behind that because we do, when our relationship when we first started seeing each other was very much, that teenage new spicy love and you're having a good time. But then when, I think when marriage hits, it is the reality of like, okay, like we can't play as much as, and when I say play, I mean just, going out to bars and having a good time and things like that. Responsibilities set in because we want to create a family and things like that. And so, um, he used to talk about how everyone at work would tell him that. So do you have advice for anybody that is maybe in a relationship where they've felt like that scale of excitement has kind of dropped down a little bit, or maybe it's been that way for a while because we do get in our routines of life, and like you said, we forget how playful and fun that it could be.
Yeah, so you're not going to enjoy sex if you view it as a chore. If you add it to the bottom of your to-do list, which is kind of where it can wind up with people if it even makes it onto that list at all.
Yeah.
So your sex life is not self-lubricating, right? It's not set it and forget it and you never have to worry about it again. It's like a car. You got to take it in for oil changes, you got to
Yeah.
got to maintain it. And so yeah, how do you do that? Well, I'm going to just say this, schedule sex. Schedule sex. And
Yeah.
scheduled sex, and people say, "Oh my gosh, that's so boring. It should be hot. It should be spontaneous." No, it does not need to be. I think scheduled sex can be even hotter than unplanned sex. I'll tell you this by way of sharing about myself. My partner and I, our Sunday nights are sacred. And he and I, we live apart from one another. We live right around the corner from each other. Sunday nights, we know, not just like we're gonna have sex, but that's gonna be like we're gonna push the envelope a little bit in terms of adventure. I won't divulge too much because I don't have his consent to do all of this, but
Right.
so I look forward to our Sunday nights because I'm like, ooh, we're gonna have some fun tonight. I don't quite know what it's gonna
Yes.
look like, but it's gonna be neat. But you got to mix it up a little bit. And perhaps it is saying, hey, I think this week we should each go out and find a porn that kind of titillates us and share it
Yeah.
with each other and go from there. So mix it up. Don't be afraid to do that. But also, don't be afraid to schedule it because for women, most of us don't have spontaneous desire. um, 85% of men do, only 15% of women do. So we have what's called responsive desire. So we need to figure out what pushes down on my accelerator, right? What are the things that get me in the mood? And for a lot of us it is that anticipation. It can be I want some dirty talk, I want some here's what I'm going to do to you later kind of thing build up, not just okay, let's hop in bed and get naked and assume everything's going to happen.
Right.
So figure out, what are the things that get you in the mood? So not why am I not in the mood, but what could get me in the mood is a great place to start. And unfortunately, I cannot give a blanket answer to all women because the thing that gets one woman in the mood is the thing that pushes down on another woman's brakes. Stress is a big one.
Right. Yeah.
Stress for most women, it pushes on our brakes, but there's some women out there who, oh my God, when they're really stressed,
Yeah.
they want to have sex as a form of release. So there's no one size fits all. So I would encourage whoever's listening to this to figure out what are the things that get you in the mood and add those into your life. Set yourself up for success, right? It's like you're getting down to make a meal. Make sure you've got all the ingredients there at the ready to set yourself up. And maybe, go buy a toy together. Do
Yeah.
something different. Do something
Ah,
different.
spice it up.
Yep.
I like that idea. I like that idea because, initially, me and my husband have joked because our calendars are full, and I will jokingly like put it in because we have a linked calendar, and I'll be like, you know, I can't even think of one of the words, but maybe it's like emojis or something at a certain time, like jokingly. But,
Mhm.
when you initially said that, I'm like, oh, scheduling, yes, I see that. But then it's so much deeper than that, like you said. And when I start to, sit back and go, yeah, the anticipation of knowing that we're gonna make this an eventful, like, time together. Like, I'm always looking for time with my partner, and, if I have to just schedule in time just to hang out with them, like that's one thing, but like having that, I can't wait until Friday or whatever day it is that you pick. I see how that could lead into, like you said, women like to be warmed up, and that is like the ultimate pre-warmer. Like I know on this day I'm gonna get some special time. So I think that's a
And
fantastic
don't be
advice.
afraid to get specific in your requests. Like, hey, so Friday, I'm going to block this off in the calendar and I want you to take complete charge.
Yep.
Okay. Or I want you to be in the bedroom waiting for me and I'm going to take complete charge.
Ah.
Um, so yeah, don't be afraid to just give some overall structure there if there's something that you've been yearning to do.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my gosh. Such good advice. I do want to circle back and go a little bit more on this subject. I know I kind of went off on a tangent earlier when we were talking about orgasms and anatomy of women. Is it true? Do you know? Are there a group of women that are unable to climax, or is it just one of those situations where maybe we don't explore our bodies enough to really get that benefit? Because you said that organ, that part of our body is there for pleasure.
Yeah. So the research indicates that I think it's 5 to 10% of women fall into a camp known as pre-orgasmic primary, meaning they have not yet had an orgasm. And it's called pre-orgasmic because there is no indication that some women's bodies just can't orgasm, biologically speaking. There are certain things that can certainly make it difficult.
Mhm.
Antidepressants can be one of them.
Mhm.
Um, and there are some hormonal things, but no one's body is just designed like, okay, yours is
Yeah.
defective. You can't do that. So
Yeah.
normally when if we rule out the kind of psychotropic medical hormonal reasons for that, usually it comes down to one of three things: lack of education, so you don't know how to do it. Uh,
Yeah.
Imagine being raised in a society, and I can say we are raised in one, but even more extreme, where it's not even discussed. You may not even know how you're supposed to do it or that you can do it.
Yeah, that's
So,
even possible.
so not knowing, technique, not knowing what kind of tools to use, it can be because of trauma. And it can also be because of shame, right? So if you've got this nagging voice in the back of your head saying, this is sinful, that's not trauma. That's not lack of knowledge necessarily. That's shame. So really, it's dissecting what it is that's going on there and throwing everything at it. And that's what I help clients do if they do fall into that camp, um, of not being able to orgasm if they've never had one. But the good news is there's nothing to indicate that you'll just never have one. We just got to do some work to
Figure it out.
figure out
Yeah.
what the deal is. And I'm just going to throw this out there. One thing I get asked, "Oh my gosh, Rena, if I use a vibrator all the time, will that make it so that I can't
Mess it
orgasm
up.
any other way?"
Yeah.
Right. Am I going to desensitize myself? No. Isn't that awesome? No.
Oh my
No.
gosh.
No.
I'm so glad you're saying that because my husband jokes with me because again, here I am getting super personal with you guys, which I've never gotten this deep with everybody. So this is a new one. Um, I I grew up. I don't know where this shame came from, but never had a toy until I split with my previous husband and was like, I'm going buck wild. I'm gonna try everything, and still didn't really actually use a toy properly, I don't think, because like I said before, I never had an orgasm until I is with my now husband. And he would joke because I got a vibrator for the first time and it was like 2 seconds, it was there. Holy shit, how did that happen? Like I didn't even think that was possible. And so he would always joke that because I use it too much, I'm gonna I'm gonna like desensitize, or I'm gonna lose the orgasm that I get with him because, you know,
So,
desensitization.
well, no, and which it makes sense why people would think that that was the case because it does happen to men. There's this concept called death grip syndrome where and you see it more with younger men who haven't had intercourse yet and they're gripping themselves so hard when they learn to masturbate that by
Yeah.
the time they're actually having intercourse it's like it's not as stimulating. So
Hmm.
that doesn't exist with women. You cannot overuse your vibrator, which is so cool. And there's so many health benefits to having orgasms too. So I say, ladies, take your
Yeah.
vitamins, get your nutrients in. But
Yep.
a reminder is this that there is nothing on the human body that can compare to the sheer force and power of a vibrator.
Right.
So be patient with your partner. It's probably going to
Yes.
take longer a different way than it does with the toy. Like so so that's what I say like just remember how long it would take without the toy and be
Right.
patient. And I use food analogies a lot because we all eat and food is but it's like getting a frozen macaroni and cheese. You can put it in the
Mm.
microwave or put it in the oven. It's gonna get cooked either way, but just remember the oven's gonna take longer.
Ah, yes. A great analogy. I mean, it makes so much sense when you put it
Yeah.
that way. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So, how important is it that we have orgasms, and should we do it often? Like, how does that play a role? And I kind of know, but I'm asking this question for anyone who may not know. How important are orgasms, especially when it comes to mental health?
Oh, they're so good. So they release a ton of nutrients both in our body, so around the pelvic floor region, and also chemicals in our brain that are mood elevators. They help lower cortisol levels. So great way to de-stress. They release a chemical in our body that stimulates melatonin production. So they help with sleep.
Yes, my
Um,
husband goes to sleep immediately afterwards.
yep, same girl, same, or same dude, same. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good sleep aid. And what else? Oh, it helps with your skin too, because it
Oh,
decreases excess oil production. So, I mean, think about it. There's nothing else out there that we can do for ourselves that has so many anti-aging properties too. Sorry. Um, it's got so many benefits with zero side effects, zero detriment.
right.
What else
Yeah.
can we say that about that feels really good, that's really good for us, that doesn't have any negative
Doesn't
consequences?
have anything. Yeah, because I mean, you think about like you just like I think about things that are really good, like sugar is really good. It tastes really good. But there are some bad side effects to that. So I love that you said that. I think more people need to hear that.
Yes. I mean, it's like we have this thing at our disposal that's so good for us and it feels good. Like, do it every
Yeah.
day, do it multiple times a day, do it as often as you'd like.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's so awesome. So ultimately, the take back that I'm getting from all of this is to really just kind of, break that, uh, you, break the shame, but also like figure out where that maybe is coming from and process it and really work on that so that you can enjoy this thing that is naturally for us. Like I've done some research on sexual abuse and things like that because I've actually never said this on the podcast before, but I am a survivor of sexual childhood sexual abuse, and I battled with the fact that I was a young teenager and I knew it was wrong, but it was one of those situations where I battled with not necessarily shame, but almost guilt. Like I knew what I was doing, I knew it was wrong, almost taken the blame myself, and so I've
That you
had to do
felt
a lot.
complicit in it.
Yeah, and ultimately, like, he was wrong because he was much older than me, and so I was still, in the child's mindset, like, we can't rationally pick right from wrong at certain ages, but yeah, so, like, just realizing that, um, figuring out where those issues are coming from and really addressing that so that you can have an intimate life with a partner in the future that's healthy.
Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing that. I can
I can't believe I
absolutely
just did it.
empathize with you and my own childhood abuse and feeling complicit in that and not being able to share that with people for a long time. And the reality is that shame lives in the shadows. And if we can bring light to things, as you just did right now, so beautifully and so vulnerably,
Thank you, thank you.
that is how we begin to dissolve our shame.
Yeah. One of the things that made this even like come out of me was just thinking about some of the research that I had found, trying to make sense in my own mind why I did not feel like this person was in the wrong. Um, because I was, like you said, complicit. I was, you know, okay with it. And one of the things that I read was the fact that we are in innately sexual humans, sexual beings, curious. Like it's in our natural biology to desire things like that. So when things like that happen, you're curious, you're interested, it feels good. So, taking away the fact that you feel shame for that being okay, like you in your mind thinking that that was okay at the time, because it's naturally us. It's just part of our biology.
Yeah, and again, that really resonates with me, and I'll tell you what my therapist had said to me, which was, "Rena, your little tiny brain did not know how to compute that,
Right.
and it wasn't your responsibility." We're not talking about 2 kids of the same age who were getting curious and playing house together. We're talking
Right.
about your small little person's brain and an adult brain who had a duty to take care of you and didn't,
Yeah.
right? But,
Yeah.
um, hugs,
Oh,
big
thank
hugs.
you. I can't believe I just said that on the
Yeah.
air.
Yeah, I
But
mean
yeah, it's definitely something that I personally have struggled with. And I think it did trickle over into intimate relationships, how I picked my partners, um, looked for people that were older than me, thinking that, I used to say it all the time as a teenager, oh, just like the older guys, they're more mature, blah, blah, blah. Not realizing that that was kind of a, trauma bond of like, this is what's, still living in that inner child mindset of this is how it should be type situation. And then just really struggling with feeling the guilt behind that and by guilt, I mean responsible. Like I could have maybe said no, but, type situation. I don't really know what I'm trying to say.
yeah, and it's interesting because there is a lot of self-blame when it comes to being on the receiving end of sexual assault or abuse. Like, why
Mhm.
didn't I say no? Why didn't I run
Yeah.
away? And when we are in a scenario like that, our brain does a beautiful job of scanning all the ways that we can survive in that
Mhm.
moment. So we can flee, we can fight, not typically an option for
Yeah.
women, especially little tiny women, right? Like
Mhm.
children. Where are you going to
Yeah.
go? Are you going to fight this person who's a lot bigger than you? So our brain is trying to protect us, which is normally why we acquiesce and we freeze. That is actually a trauma response. So we freeze or we
Yeah.
fawn. That is your brain trying to protect you. But that becomes really confusing because after the fact, you're like, well, I must have enjoyed it because I just laid there and took it.
Mhm. Yep.
But if we can understand the neuroscience behind trauma and trauma responses, you can say, "Thank you, brain, for protecting me," right? Because that was really the only viable option at that time. Um, and I will say, you brought up trauma bonds, and it could be that, but I'm gonna offer a different perspective on this too.
All right.
Based on you saying I tended to go for older men because of this. So our brains also can do this beautiful thing called restaging, which is where we want to almost replicate the abuse, but in a way where we are actually now the ones in the driver's seat. So
Mm.
you choosing to go for older men could have actually been a form of empowerment for you because
Mm.
you were in the director's chair this time, making the decision to be with an older person. So we see this often with
Wow.
women who are like, how is it that I have fantasies about r- rape fantasies or forced seduction fantasies
Right.
as a sexual assault survivor? Oh my God, there must be something really wrong with me. I'm so twisted.
Yeah.
No, actually, that's your brain trying to say, hey, let's do this over again. But this time it's going to be on my terms. So that way I can heal.
Ah, that is powerful right there. Just hearing that, and I mean, yeah, I've ex- never heard that. Oh my gosh, like I'm speechless. Thank you for saying that because that really just, yeah.
That I find to be the most I teach a lot of classes on sexual fantasies, and inevitably, I will get, a private message in the chat box or an email or a DM saying, "What is wrong with me?" This tends to be one thing that troubles women the most. So if we can
Yeah.
educate and understand that I think it's 53% of women have had forced seduction fantasies,
Mm-hmm.
very normal. And it's not that you actually want to be sexually assaulted by somebody. Most of us,
Right.
when we're walking alone at night, don't like
Don't want
dream about right?
it. Yeah.
So it's making friends with the fantasy and understanding that this could be a way of restaging that happened to you. But
Wow.
again, I could talk for 2 hours about sexual fantasies because it's something that is so rich in research, interesting and provocative, but I'll leave it
I
there for
mean,
now.
I'm totally like willing to have you come back on later in time, and we can dive into that because I know that's such a taboo topic
Yeah.
that we're scared to talk about. I think with the 50 Shades of Grey when that came out, everyone was like, "Oh my gosh," but like super interested in it. And so, again, it's one of those other things that's taboo, and we feel shameful or dirty thinking about it. So, but yeah, thank you for saying what you just said. I mean, it really just kind of opened up my mind and my eyes a little bit to process that and work on, you know, being okay with some of the decisions that I made in my life after the fact. So,
You're so welcome. And just, I mean, make friends. Like your brain is this beautiful machine that is trying to protect you.
yeah,
And it normally is pretty rational. Like we can't see it. Like, why would it be
right.
doing this? But we can really put everything in its place to where it makes sense why you would have done this. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely welcome. I'm glad I could be of service to
Ah,
you.
yeah. I mean, I feel like there's a million other things that I could ask you and we could talk about because you have such a wealth of knowledge. But I do want to, mention in the show real quick that you guys should definitely give her a follow on her social media because it's very informative. I mean, you caught my eye, and then I'm like so glad that I'm there and I get to see that information every day. But I do have a couple questions that I would like to ask you that I like to ask all of my guests. So if you're ready for that, we'll jump right into that.
Let's do it.
Yeah, what would be the best piece of advice that you would give a younger version of yourself who is in the thick of struggle if you had just a few moments with them?
What is meant for you will not go past you.
That is beautiful. Ah, yes. And then my most favorite question that I like to ask is we like to talk about power on the show and not thinking of that as a bad thing. How would you describe or how would you think of the type of power that you try to step into every day?
Ooh, okay. So the power I try to step into is if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, would I feel like I was living and standing in my truth? Would I have any regrets about how I was living my life? And that to me is empowerment. So yeah.
Ah, that is fantastic. Oh my gosh. Again, I would love to have you back on and talk more with you, but I know that you are a busy woman helping lots and lots of women with their own intimacy, love lives. But if anyone's interested in reaching out to you and jumping in on your program, they're intrigued and they're like, hey, what would be the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can head over to my website, which is my name, renamartine.com. Learn a little bit about the program. Shoot me an email through there, through my contact form. I make everyone go through a deep consultation because I only
Yeah.
help women I'm 100% confident I can help. So just shoot me a message, say hi. You can also DM me on Instagram and get the conversation going that way.
My gosh, yes. I'm so excited for what the future holds for you. I know it is just you're just getting started. It's amazing. Yeah, thank you so much for being on the show today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I want to thank my guests again for sharing their incredible story of transformation with us. I have linked their social medias below in the show notes so that you can give them a follow through their journey. Also, don't forget to check out the art that goes along with each week's episode at iempower.club. If you personally feel connected to the art and you would like to purchase a limited edition print that goes along with it as your own reminder to step into your power, you can do so at our website. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at iempowerclub, on TikTok at iempowerclub, and of course, YouTube at iempower. And don't forget to like and subscribe so that you don't miss next week's episode of I Empower. See you then.